Hey there, how there, ho there, it's Jeff here now welcoming you to another Stone Cold Hockey 1970-71 with the Montreal Canadiens to see if Ken Dryden plays more than 6 games. The computer has to give me some help. Anyway, Montreal's second in the East at 10-4-2. Not bad. 22 points. Second. Toronto third. Buffalo fourth. So right now, Buffalo would make the playoffs. Vancouver's tied. Rangers are only 1 point off. And the Red Wings are the dead things, if you will. But Boston, look at them 13-1-1. The Red Wings are the only team to have knocked them off, and they've only won twice. Boston's looking very freaking tastic. In the West, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, and LA are all fighting. It's like almost 2 points every time, and then with Philly and California just not doing so well. Nevertheless, Danny Grant, 14 points. Orland Krudenbach, the former Ranger, is tied for first in goals. Our best goal scorer, Pete Mahovlich, is 12th in the league with 8. Assist-wise, JC Tremblay leads Bobby Orr by 2 and John Busick by 3. So we have the assist leader. Points leader, Johnny Busick's number 1. Ken Hodge and Bobby Orr, so the 3 Bruins. But JC Tremblay is actually 1 point out of 3rd place. He's 5th in points. Mahovlich Pete's 21st. Belleville's 22nd. Jacques Lemar's 27th. Goaltending wise, Jacques Plante's got a 164 goals against. He's 5-0-6. Hard to believe that Jacques Plante's won 5 times and tied 6 times. And Bruce Gamble's been basically the GOAT. Not in a good way, 2-2. Eddie Johnston at 167 goals against 8-0-1. The guy who lost was Jerry Cheevers. And Phil Myers at 188, 5-1-2. Without him, we're 5-3-0. And Fashion's 4-3. Dryden's played 1 game. Well, he's played a few games when we've lost. It's weird how Joe Daly's won 4 games, but his year his goals against 3-4-6, and Doug Favell's only won 1 game. Actually, Bernard Perron's only won 1 game for the Flyers. His goals against is 305. And Al Smith and Rogie are above 500. Anyway, standings wise, we played 16 games. Our points percentage aside, Rangers have a good points percentage. Vancouver's played 19 games, Rangers play 15. They might sneak in over Buffalo by points percentage. Chicago, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, LA. LA's only played 14 games. We are 4-0-2 at home. Us alongside Boston have yet to lose in regulation. Lose at all at home. Because remember, regular season overtime did not exist till 1983. We're 6-4 on the road, not half bad. Well, everyone's won at least 1 home game. Red Wings can't win on the road now. They can California. Team wise, we're Phil Meyer 5-1-2, Fashon 4-3-0. Dryden's only had 1 start. He's played in a few games. He's done all that. So JC Tremblay 21 points, Pete Mahovlich, Sean Belleville 15 each. Looking at the schedule, we had a 3-game winning streak with Detroit, Buffalo, Chicago. Our 3-game winning streak, Cal, St. Louis, and Buffalo. Highlights wise, we crushed Buffalo 1 time 7-0 when Joe Daly got his bell rung. And Dave Dryden actually came in, but I would have used Dryden, but because Vashon was pitching shutouts, I couldn't do it. So that's the 7-0 win. Our biggest loss was 6-1 to Boston. In Boston, Vashon only played 33 minutes, and I put Dryden in the net. Regardless of that, every team's well, actually, Toronto's only lost by 2. Boston got crushed by Detroit 6-3. Toronto has not lost by 3 goals or more. Yeah, 9 hat tricks in the NHL. Dennis Hall is the only one who's got a hat trick for a original 16. Most memorable game, LA St. Louis from October 31st when St. Louis came back from 2-0 down to win 7-4. Pittsburgh Vancouver number 2 on this thing. Newton beat Wilson. It was back and forth. And LA Philly October 29th. Okay, I just wanted to know a few things. All right, so we are playing host to California, the Golden Seals. And it will be Rogie in the net against Gary Suitcase Smith, Chris Werby, and Bob Sned in the backups. That means I don't know. Rogie number 1, Phil Meyer number 2, Ken Dryden our 3rd, the goalie. California with Ernie Hick, the former, I think he was a former Hab. Dennis Hextall, the uncle of Ron Hextall. Jerry Eman, I remember him from the Blues, I think. His name sounds familiar. Or the Leafs, maybe. Bill Hick, Gary Courteau, Gary Jarrett, Ron Ferguson, Donald Donahue, Ted Hampson, Carl Fatney, the former Bruin. No, the future Bruin, I guess, and future Ranger. Ron Stackhouse, Tony Featherstone, Stackhouse, former future Canuck. Earl Inglefield, the former Ranger. Doug Roberts, Joe Hardy, Dick Matusi, Bert Marshall, Paul Andrade, former Penguin, Mike Lawton, Wayne Lulin, Harry Howell, the former Rangers icon who played over 1,000 games for them, and Barry Buckner. They don't have Tommy Williams or Dick Redmond yet. As for us, we have the road runner Yvonne Cornway, Piste Pete Maravich, Jacques Lemaire, Jellyman Jean Belleville, Mark Tartif, who will do better in the WHA, Frank Mahovlich, we don't have yet. Of course, when Detroit is desperate and gives us Frank Mahovlich. The policeman, John Ferguson, Point 2, Guy Lapointe, Mickey Redmond, I believe, went to Detroit in that trade for Mahovlich. Frank Mahovlich. Phil Roberto around, the guy who passed the puck to Belleville for his 500th goal. Andre Pocket Rocket Richard, J.C. Tremblay, another WHA stalwart. Claude Rose, Rajon Wool, Peanut, as they call him, Bobby Sheehan, Bill Collins, Serge Savard, a young Serge Savard, Neil Rochefort, Guy Charon, who had over 700 games in the NHL but never made the playoffs once. He would have made the playoffs for the 71 Habs, but then he got traded to Detroit in the Frank Mahovlich deal. Terry Harper, Larry Plow, Ralph Backstrom, who was traded from Montreal to LA to make sure that the Golden Seals did not overtake LA and get out of the basement because the Golden Seals gave Montreal the first round pick in 1971 in a trade in 1970. And of course, the Golden Seals finished last in the NHL, which meant Montreal had the number one pick, and they picked Guy Lafleur. Fred Huck around, Jacques Laperriere, a young Jacques Laperriere, and a young Pierre Bouchard. Roberts in the next 2 minutes. You take a chance, Mickey Raymond. Stop by Smith. Yikes. And they killed someone on Cornwall. Then a little bit later. Much later. Gary Jarrett just couldn't take the shot. Final moments. Gentlemen, LaPointe has 2 assists, and Jean Belleville with the goal makes it 2-0 for us. A few minutes into the period, action for Cal with Hampson. No, he missed. Much later, we're turning the clock. Mickey Redmond. Again, stop by Gary. 2 more minutes. Hit. Then Hextall got blocked. 4 minutes later. Action, miss, Belleville, and now Bill Hick scores. While Bill Hick is 7th. Croteau with the assist. 2-1. Yikes. Damn it. There goes the shutout. Last moment of the period. No, stopped by Gary Smith. It's only 2-1, so we can't take California for granted. Trying to take a clock. Carofane, stop by Fashion. Nice job. 3 minutes later. Good middle match. To the LNH. Let's kill the clock. Gets a hit on Belleville, which is not nice. Through the chapeau, throw those hats, his mind from Waterford. Belleville says, take that, bitch. And we take California to the wood chipper 4-1. I know it doesn't look much. So anyway, trying to do this in French as best as I can. And premier but de Montréal à 12 minutes 52 secondes. Harper, premier but de la saison. This is par Lemaire Lapointe. À 19 minutes 6 secondes de la première période. Belleville, 7e de la saison. 6 par Lapointe. Deuxième période, 13 minutes 1 seconde. California but de Biohic, numéro 7. 6 par Courteau. Montréal, la troisième période. 8 minutes 15 secondes. But de Belleville à Tremblay et 17 minutes 9 secondes. Belleville à Ferguson. Montréal gagné. Montréal 11 victoires, 4 défaites, 2 égalités. California 2 victoires, 11 défaites, 4 égalités. Only 1 penalty. Wow. We were clean. And they were clean too, to an extent. Wednesday night, no game for us. Rangers crushed LA 5-1. Vermeeren beats Descharty. Dick Duff scoring for LA. Rangers go by Hatfield, Irvin, Rattel, Brown, Taylor, Irvin. Break the walls down! Boston narrowly beats Minnesota 3-2. Cheevers over Chabert. They were be teammates. Minnesota was up 2-1 for Russo and Grant scoring goals, but Boston goes by Pine McKenzie, Busick, and then Eddie Westfall, the winner, with 18 seconds left. Toronto will beat Buffalo 4-1. Plante beats Daly. Buffalo go by 90 Marshall, but Toronto goes by Paul Anderson, Daryl Sittler, my man, Jerry Monahan, and Billy McMillan. November 19th, we host our hated rivals, the Leafs. California goes into Philly and ties 4-4. Smith and Perrant. Cali was up 4-1. They had a chance for their first road win and they botched it. Nolet, Clark, and Peters. Well, Peters with 43 seconds left. St. Louis, Pittsburgh. St. Louis beats Pittsburgh. Big win. Now we have to host Toronto. And we put Meyer in the net against Jacques Plante, who's making a big return to Montreal in a sense. I know he's been out of Montreal for 9 years, but it's always good because remember, Plante played a few years and then had a 3-year mini retirement and then came back to the NHL with the Blues. And I remember, no, the 67-68 Blues did not have Plante. He came back the mini retirement. Jacques Plante, Bertie Perrant, Bruce Gamble, and Murray McLaughlin all in net. Well, McLaughlin was a has-been. Bertie Perrant, actually, that's kind of incorrect because Perrant didn't play for the Leafs. He was traded from Philly to Toronto. People forget that Bertie Perrant, he had those magic seasons in the mid-70s, but he wasn't. But that was in his first tour duty with the Flyers. People forget about that. He was picked up from Boston in the expansion draft and then traded from Philly when they sucked to Toronto for Bruce Gamble, who unfortunately a few years later, the next year, suffered a heart attack during the Flyers game against the Canucks. Well, he was on the bench, thank goodness. Yeah, Plante and Perrant as teammates. Gosh, I mean, Jacques Plante, great goalie of the 50s and 60s, and Bertie Perrant, best goalie in the 70s. Well, anyway, the Leafs having Davey Keon, gentleman Dave Keon, Normie Ullman, part of that Detroit-Toronto deal that sent. Who did Toronto send to Detroit? Oh yeah, Frank Mahovlich. Paul Henderson, Canada Summit Series 72 hero. Ron Ellis, number 6 in your programs. Billy McMillan, who had gone to decent flame. That rhyme. Guy Trottier, Jerry Monahan, Jim Harrison, who was a decent player, who would go on to the WHA with the Alberta Oilers. Daryl Sittler, the man from London. I know he came from that city, but come on, I have a Daryl Sittler autograph card. Brian Spinner Spencer, who unfortunately suffered the loss of his dad because his dad was upset that, well, his son was going to be on Hockey Day in Canada being interviewed by Ward Cornell. Because they were living in BC, the CBC affiliate would show the Canucks game, and Brian Spencer's dad tried to force him into the league game, but they didn't budge, and a play shootout happened. Jim Dory, who once had 8 penalties in one game. George Armstrong, the chief, the captain. Mike Pellick, Jim McKenney, who would be on to City TV for stuff. Rick Lay, who would do better for the Whalers in the WHA. Mike Shaker Walton, Brad Selwood, Bob Bond, still around. Wow. Dennis Dupere, Brian Glennie, Bob Linnington. Yeah, so let's see what happens. 5 minutes into the game. Each Lumley. 3 minutes. Forcer. There's a fight. And it's Story and Mahovlich. Pete Mahovlich? What? Pete? Why wasn't it Ferguson? Jim Dory. Well, they got rid of Pete Mahovlich for 5 minutes. What doesn't matter? Come on, we got to fill the best out. Deuxième de la saison, le point est bénévole. We have a chance for the Leafs score. Henderson scores for Canada. I mean, he scores for Toronto from Spinner, Spencer, and Pellick. 2-1. Much later, aggression, microaggression penalty, and it's Rick Lay for 2. Lemaire can't do anything, and now they can Ferguson. But we're up 2-1 after 2. After 1. Well, the Leafs do have fewer losses than us, but the fact of the matter is that they have more ties, in a sense. That's kind of why they're ahead of us, in a sense. 3 minutes into the second period. So first, Henri, stopped by Plante. Pocket Rocket. I think, he was a teammate of Plante's. 5 minutes later. Mickey Redmond has 4 from Pocket Rocket and Cornway. 3-1. 5 more minutes. Toronto, that's Jimmy Harrison. That chance, Bilbo. Stop by Plante. Cornway. No, Ellis. No, what a stop. What a stop. Ellis almost had it, but we're up 3-1 after 2. 4 minutes later, battle of aggression. And Roberto. Oh boy. Chance for the Leafski. Power play go. The Chief. George Armstrong, his 4th from Davy Keeline. And yes, George Armstrong was First Nations. 3-2. Killing the clock on us. Trottier, no shot. Trottier thought he had it. 2 minutes later, battle. Another fight. And it's Ferguson and Bond. Well, that works out because Leafs are down to 5 defensemen. Empty net, nothing. Well, they tried and they failed. They did score in the third, but we won 3-2. Another close one. Goals by Cornway, Roberto, and Redmond for us. Paul Henderson and Armstrong for the Leafs. So we give the Leafs their 3rd loss of the season. Friday night, LA Vancouver. Vancouver wins the game 4-2 as Wilson beats Norris. LA goes by Barry and Joyle, but Vancouver goes by Pat Quinn. Yes, that Pat Quinn. Cordenbach, Hall, and Boudrias. Who's M. Hall? Murray Hall. I was thinking Murray Hall. I would have been right. Saturday night, we host the Rangers. Vancouver, LA. Back in LA to LA, and LA wins the second game of the home. Buffalo, Minnesota tie 3-3. I believe we'll make this, Sunday. I think we have to play back to back. I don't know. Boston, Philly, Boston, 7-2. That was not even close. Cheapest piece of fell. Philly goes by Dornhofer and Clark, but Boston goes by Orr, Stanfield, Busick, Espo, or Busick, McKenzie. Detroit, Pittsburgh. Shocker. Detroit wins 2-1. Edwards beats Smith. Unger and Webster scored for Detroit. Boyer for Pittsburgh. They shocked us. Chicago crushes St. Louis in the fine powder 5-1. Desjardins beat Wakely. Wall, the only goal for St. Louis. Papin, Brian Campbell, Pinder, Makita, and Moans. For the Blackhawks, the Leafs recover and win 3-1 over the worst team around California. So loses the Plante. Hicks scored. They're up 1-0, but Lee with 1 and K on with 2. Those two would meet in the WHA with the Whalers. Rangers from Montreal, we host the Rangers, and Rogie in the net against Vermoon. They had a goalie platoon in New York, Jackman and Vermoon. Davy Bellin, former Hab. Rod Shelbert, victimized by an ice cream container in Guelph and had to have spinal surgery. Walkachuk, Kitchener. Had to say it. Sean Rattel. Vic Hatfield, good left winger, not welcome in Leafland because of him throwing Freddie Perrant's mask in the stands in the playoffs. Terrible Ted Irving, break the walls down because his son was Chris Jericho. Pete Stamkowski, former relief. Jim Nielsen, I think they called him the Chief, I can't remember. Brad Park, who was a great defenseman for the Rangers in history. Beryl Fairbairn. Jack Eagers, Kitchener. Don't believe me? Well, let's look at Google. Canadian hockey player from Sudbury. See, 1966, 67, 68. What does that say? Kitchener Rangers. Told you so. I know where I speak. So Kitchener. Rod Sealing, Kitchener. 3 Kitchener Rangers on one team. I think the 75 Sabres were the same. But anyway, Ron Stewart, former Blue, I remember coaching him until they traded him to the Rangers for Red Berenson, Arnie Brown, Tim Horton, known for their bear hugs and bear claws, if you will. Andre Moose Dupont, a Ranger, yeah, I guess. Sillaps, not Sillaps Sr., the legendary 30s player for the Leafs, but Sillaps Jr., Larry Brown, Mike Robitaille, Jim Kurlicki, and Ab DeMarco. 3 minutes into the game. Chabert can't get the shot off. Much later. We take a shot? No, Backstrom tries to take a shot. 2 minutes later, Tyler will hit. 5 minutes later, aggression, microaggression, guess who we did. And it will be Pocket Rocket, of all people. Eagers can't do anything, now they can Ron Stewart. Apparently for us, it will be Phil Roberto. No score through 20 minutes. Wojciechowski or Papa power play goal, Fick, Hatfield and McCoy. His 6 from Arnie Brown and Tim Horton. Of all people. 3 minutes later, we have a chance. Collins stopped by Vermeer. Aye. 4 minutes later, we have another chance. Brad Park stopped by Rogie. Ah boy. Much later, Cook, Chuck, Nilzer. 2 minutes later, agitated. Chip and remember, it's a young Search Savard. He hasn't bloomed yet. And we are tied after 20 minutes, 40 minutes. When am I thinking, Cutter? 1-1. Much later. Canadiens. 4 minutes later, I think Pete Maravich was still in college in 1971. Stemkowski can't do a thing about it. 3 minutes later, agitator. We deliver the hits, and then they got pissed off. Retaliatory action and Eagers. Target gets hit. Jack Lemaire is stemming from Parkland. That's 3-1. Empty nets. We could slide it in the net. Skior! Rod Gilbert makes it 3-2 from Kachuk, Kitchener, and Rattel. Oh boy. They tried and they failed to get at least a point. We win again, 3-2. Another tight one. Hadfield and Gilbert for the Rangers. Us, Tardif, Pete, and Lemaire. So we did our job. We win 3-2. Do we have a Sunday game? The answer is no, we don't. Okay, so we can end this video. Boston ties Pittsburgh 4-4. Pittsburgh was up 4-0, and they couldn't finish the job. How? McCreary, Ponifo, Schinkel, and Andy Bathgate. Boston, the comeback was big. Westfall, Cashman, Westfall, and Pye McKenzie. And they had like 11 minutes to come from the ultimate comeback. California couldn't do it in Chicago. They lose 2-1. Rangers lose to Minnesota. The North Stars should thank us for making them cream puffs. And Detroit beats Philly 3-1. Edwards beats Peralt. Bernier, the only goal for Philly. Webster, Harris, and Unger. Detroit keeps winning games. That's back to back. On the 24th, Boston beats St. Louis 4-3. Cheevers beats Hall. It was a tough one. Stanfield, Cashman, Hodge, and Cashman scoring for the Boston. Toronto will get crushed by Pittsburgh. And Minnesota beats Vancouver 3-1. Our next game's in Chicago. California couldn't win at home against the Kings. Flyers with a shutout of the Rangers. Rangers were 6-6-6. The belly of the beast. Prom with a shutout. Peters with 1, Clark with 2. Buffalo, Pittsburgh 2-2 tie. But we're going to head to Chicago. We're going to head to what would ultimately be the Stanley Cup Finals opponent for us. And see if we can slow down Chicago. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond.